The segment began as a routine political discussion on Rosie O'Donnell's live talk show, where she invited guests to debate trending issues around policy, equity, and public discourse. Representative Jasmine Crockett had joined to offer her views on legislative transparency and youth engagement in democracy. What was expected to be a cordial, if spirited conversation soon took a sharp turn. Midway through the segment, O'Donnell made a veiled remark that many in the room immediately recognized as more than a disagreement. It was a jab. "I mean, Jasmine, you're passionate, but do you really understand how all this works?" said with a half-smile that did little to hide the condescension. Crockett's expression didn't change. She sat forward slightly in her chair, fingers laced calmly in her lap, eyes locked onto O'Donnell. The room tensed. It was the kind of moment where audiences shift from passive viewers to active witnesses. "I'm sorry," Crockett said smoothly. "Are you questioning my comprehension, or just assuming my background can't keep up with your expectations?" The studio fell quiet. O'Donnell attempted a chuckle. "No shade," she said quickly. "It's just that some people in Congress play more to the camera than to the Constitution." Crockett responded immediately, and some talk show hosts confused sarcasm with substance. It was the kind of sharp exchange rarely seen live, without a full PR cleanup afterward, but Crockett wasn't done. "Let's clarify something," she began. "I didn't study law to impress celebrity panels. I studied it to defend rights you can afford to mock." O'Donnell tried to interject, but Crockett raised a hand, not rudely, but firmly. "Oh, you invited me here, Rosie, so allow me the courtesy of finishing." The control she exhibited was magnetic, the calm in her voice belying the power in her words. "You asked if I understand how things work. I do. I understand that power often disguises itself as humor." As social media lit up with clips of the exchange, Crockett maintained her composure. "You said I might be playing to the camera, but I don't have to perform. My work speaks louder than your studio applause." The audience remained respectfully quiet, sensing this wasn't a moment for laughter. "I walk into committee rooms where I'm the only black woman, where my credentials are questioned before I speak, but I stay. I fight. I legislate. Guess what, Rosie? I win." The studio audience began to murmur, not in disapproval, but in awe. Even those who came as fans of the host were visibly moved. O'Donnell, known for her combative style, looked briefly stunned. She blinked, then said, Okay, I didn't mean to touch a nerve." Crockett smiled tightly. "You didn't touch a nerve. You touched a mirror. And what you saw looking back made you uncomfortable." Her words were surgical. "Intelligence isn't loud. It isn't always soft either. It's knowing when to listen, when to speak, and when to correct. Someone live on air who should know better." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing with confidence. Crockett nodded subtly in acknowledgement, but didn't gloat. Crockett leaned back and took a breath. "I've been underestimated my whole life, Rosie, by teachers, by colleagues, by men in halls of power who think that black womanhood is more image than intellect. And each time, I rise not just for me, but for every young girl watching, wondering if she'll ever be respected in rooms not built for her voice." The audience was silent again, but with a heavy emotional charge. O'Donnell's smirk faded, and she sat back, seemingly realizing this wasn't a typical sparring match. She had unintentionally opened a door and Crockett had filled the room. With truth, the network's producers signaled to move on, but Crockett wasn't finished. "If you want to have real dialogue, we can. But let's not dress up microaggressions as just questions, because I came here with facts. Not to play court jester to someone who's used to steering the conversation with punchlines." O'Donnell, clearly off balance, said, "I didn't mean to offend." Crockett nodded. Intent doesn't erase impact, but acknowledgement is the first step. That sentence resonated. A few members of the audience even stood clapping quietly. It was clear the tide had shifted. The show was no longer Rosie's, it belonged to Crockett's clarity. The following commercial break was unusually long. Online, however, the moment was going viral. Hashtags like Crockett Clapback and Respect Black Women began trending. Clips were shared with captions like, Jasmine didn't just defend herself, she educated live TV. Political analysts weighed in within hours. Some praised Crockett's grace under fire. Others critiqued O'Donnell's handling, calling it a classic example of dismissive discourse disguised as banter. Either way, the message was clear. Something important had happened. And it wasn't about ego, it was about respect. When the show resumed, O'Donnell looked directly into the camera and made a brief statement. "Look, I want to say I respect Representative Crockett and the work she does. I'm here to ask questions, not insult." Crockett nodded slightly but didn't offer a full reprieve. "Apology accepted," she said. "But remember, good questions challenge ideas, not identities." The line drew another round of applause. It wasn't a burn, it was a boundary. And Crockett had drawn it with firm dignity. Even O'Donnell's usual allies in the entertainment sphere began tweeting support for Crockett's response. Later that evening, Crockett released a short video on her own social media, addressing the encounter. "Today I was reminded that not every platform is safe, but every moment is an opportunity. If my intelligence is ever questioned again, I'll let my record respond." The video, less than a minute long, racked up millions of views in under 24 hours. Activists, academics, and fellow lawmakers reposted it with messages of solidarity. "This is why representation matters," one wrote. "Not just to be present, but to speak truth with spine." The following day, major networks reached out to Crockett for interviews. She declined most. "I don't need to turn someone else's mistake into my marketing," she said in a single tweet. "We've got work to do." Instead, she returned to Capitol Hill, where she introduced legislation to expand voting rights for underserved communities. The media coverage followed her there, but she stayed focused. "The spotlight doesn't build policy," she reminded reporters. "Grind does." Her ability to pivot from viral moment to meaningful work set her apart and deepened the public's respect for her. Within the week, several op-eds were published in major papers analyzing the confrontation. One read, "Crockett showed what it means to meet ignorance with intelligence and ego with evidence." Another stated, "Rosie O'Donnell questioned Congresswoman's credentials on her own show and ended up taking a masterclass in dignity." Still, Crockett didn't respond to the commentary. Her silence was strategic, a statement in itself. Let the moment breathe. Knowing that validation from viewers was more powerful than verbal sparring. Behind the scenes, other talk shows reportedly reached out, offering her guest spots. She agreed to appear on one, a moderated roundtable focused on women in leadership. There, she spoke less about the O'Donnell incident and more about broader systemic issues. "What happened on that show wasn't new," she said. "It was just televised. And if that discomfort leads to dialogue, then it served a purpose." Her refusal to center herself in the drama, instead framing it as a systemic teaching moment, earned her praise from educators and activists nationwide. Rosie, for her part, eventually issued a lengthier apology, posted on her own page. "I've reflected on how my words landed. I was wrong to question Jasmine Crockett's intelligence. She was brilliant, poised, and deserved more respect." While some called the apology overdue, Crockett's response was measured. "Growth is never late if it's real," she wrote. "We move forward when we learn." Her followers called it the classiest mic drop they'd ever seen. Once again, she had turned tension into teaching, without ever once needing to shout in classrooms across the country. Clips from the exchange began to show up in media literacy lessons. Teachers highlighted it as a study in power dynamics, grace, under fire, and how to engage with antagonism without stooping to insult. "This is how you reclaim space," one instructor told her students, "with facts, not fury." Crockett herself shared a photo of a student presentation slide with her image in the title, "The Power of Poised Resistance." Her caption simply read, "For them, I'll keep showing up." Soon after, Crockett was invited to deliver a keynote at a leadership conference for young women of color. Her speech, titled "Turning Doubt into Discipline," ended with the words, "When someone underestimates you, thank them, because they just gave you the chance to show what real brilliance looks like." The audience rose in a standing ovation. One attendee tweeted, "She didn't just respond to Rosie, She responded to every teacher, every boss, every skeptic who's ever said, "Are you sure you're smart enough?" Her viral moment became a movement. Advocacy groups launched campaigns under slogans like "Ask better questions" and "Respect the seat." Crockett supported these quietly, redirecting the attention back to the causes she championed: reproductive justice, voting rights, criminal justice reform. "I'm not a moment," she told one interviewer. "I'm a mission." Her clarity was unwavering, and her ability to harness media moments without being consumed by them became a model for others in public life. Months later, Crockett and O'Donnell crossed paths again, this time at a televised roundtable on political dialogue. The energy was markedly different.
O'Donnell beefing.